interestingly enough, right, we have both Saudi Arabia and the UAE making massive financial commitments to this. And what we
Mm.
saw about a decade ago was these two nations making massive commitments to new energy and environmental investments. And it's the advantage of being um, a nation, ruled by a ruler who can say, "Okay, yea, verily, we're going there," and not having to deal with a full Congress and Senate and democracy. But their ability to pivot so rapidly and say, "Listen, the most important thing in the world is AI, and we're committing, $1 trillion, and it will be multiple trillions into AI," is a massive advantage for them. Salim, you've had these conversations.
It is incredibly impressive to watch. And when you get we often talk about governance models, and it's always clear that the best model is a benevolent dictator,
Yeah,
right? And the problem is, in
especially
many
now.
cases, a dictator doesn't stay benevolent. But in these cases, they actually seem to be very much so. I've spent more time in the UAE, and the stories you hear about His Highness bin Zayed are unbelievable in terms of the character of the man,
Yeah.
and the sheer integrity that is coming through, and then that cascades down all the way very quickly. So it's super impressive to watch, and the fact that they're making these investments. I think at the macro level, the combination of U.S. innovation and capital coming from the Middle East makes it kind of unbeatable what the future holds.
For sure. Let's take the next. Let's go to the next slide here, and this is the minister Abdullah Swaha uh, is having a conversation with David Sachs. Abdullah Swaha is the minister covering space and comm and technology. He's a beautiful man. I call him a friend. I knew him back when he was at Cisco before the ruler of uh, the kingdom tapped on him to come back. Let's play this interview between David Sachs and Minister Abdullah Swaha.
Technologies have helped us deliver a passport within 5 minutes. You said to me, we're going to soon see that in other economies as well. How you could renew your license, how you could do all of your different digital services in a cashless society as well, from the digital age and in the intelligent age. We've showed you firsthand how we're creating nanorobots with CRISPR technology, leveraging generative AI to tackle sickle cell disease, bad cholesterol, have targeted gene therapy, which is remarkable, reducing the cost to treat a patient from $2.2 million to just sub $100,000. Think about the remarkable work that we're doing in agentic AI, helping Aramco energize the world, which we need to fuel the US ambition and Saudi's ambition in AI training and inference, because we're going to converge not only to the price point of electronics, but it's really the price points of electrons.
Amazing. I mean, we're seeing huge investments by the government across all exponential technology areas. Now, I think what's incredible is by virtue of their size and their technology base, they're outstripping other nations around the world. They don't come close to what we're doing in the United States, but they're focusing their capital and they're driving breakthroughs.
And they're moving quickly. I think in that video clip, if you have time to watch the full video, David Sachs has some brilliant things to say, as always. But you can sense, they have complete freedom. They have tons of capital and complete freedom to act quickly in this AI environment, and you can feel that vibe just in that video clip. And David Sachs, he is within the constraints of congressional votes and wearing his suit and tie and his dress shoe. You can just feel the difference in ability to be nimble. And I remember when I was a kid growing up, mostly in Iran as a young child, and my mom would always tell us, like, U.S. foreign policy is going to be a disaster in this country. She learned the language, she spoke Farsi. She really got integrated into the culture, which very few Americans in the country did at the time. And she said the problem fundamentally is that Americans, every 4 years, we completely change our mind on what we're trying to achieve in this country.
Yeah.
And there's no consistency whatsoever over time. And boy, did she turn out to be right about that. So you're right, Salim. And this kind of AI timeframe is so short, and there's so much that needs to be done so quickly. The freedom to just sit back and act, having infinite or near infinite capital and instant decision making it's a pretty powerful thing.
During the COVID, when we had to make decisions very quickly, every major democracy failed in navigating COVID well. Actually, every major country failed. All the small countries did very well. So I think there's a hint there as to the future of governance as you go to a micro level.
Yeah, Dave, you said something that's really important a second ago. I just want to point it out. Speed here. We're going to see the AI, I don't call it AI wars, AI dominance play out over the next 2 to 3 years, 2 to 4 years.
Yep.
At which point I don't say it's game over, but who's on top and who's second and third is unlikely to change after that. So what we're seeing is really a jockeying for position between major nations, in particular China, the Emirates, Saudi. Qatar will play in there as well. I don't think Russia is going to be relevant unless they team up with China in some fashion. And then it's whoever's leading the game is going to make the rules.
If I give the counterpoint side, the speed of democratization is such that even if one domain, one kind of pairing of partners goes ahead of the other, that it'll level off very quickly after that. And we've seen that over the last couple of years. You've OpenAI, and then you've got Gemini, and then you've got DeepSeek, and then that gets overtaken. I think it's going to democratize much faster than the past, and therefore you won't see one taking off in a winner-take-all type of opera. That's my view.
I think it's a safer view if that's the case, but I think and we'll have a conversation on this in a few minutes, where AI is beginning to self-code, and we have the potential for a runaway digital superintelligence race with whoever's on top. Dave, how do you think about that?
Well, Peter, your first statement was so right, and you can't overstate the winner-take-all effects that are going on. There isn't currently a force to democratize any of this, and it would take a huge amount of inertia very quickly to democratize all of this. The forces of concentration of everything are just unbelievable because of that self-improvement effect that Peter just mentioned. And so, I'm telling everybody around here, everyone around MIT, everyone around Harvard, everyone around my kids, like, you have a window of opportunity that's exactly the timeline Peter laid out of about 4 years to set the course of your entire life. Nobody knows what's going to happen after that, but the forces of concentration are much stronger than the forces of distribution. So the safest bet by far is to run like hell toward your targets. And in the event that something happens that spreads out all the value, you're fine. But in the other event where it's all concentrated, you'll be very glad you didn't waste a millisecond between now and 2030.
I think though there's two different things here, right? One is exponential opportunities if you move fast, which I 100% agree with. Okay. But the other part of winner take all, I will disagree, and let's see who's right over the next little while.
Well, we will see.
2 against 1.
It's going to play out over the next 2 to 4 years. I mean, why do you think the entire AI leadership of our nation and the financial leadership of our nation showed up in Saudi Arabia for a week? Everybody, not just a few people. There was a significant enough meeting and a significant enough purpose of that meeting to say you had to be there. And I think we'll draw a line from last week to consequences that will be dominant for decades.
Yeah, I mean, I cannot tell you how unnatural an act it is for a Saudi Arabian to wake up one morning and invest in CoreWeave or Cerebras. Like that doesn't just happen. It's like, what, because we have sand nearby? No. There's clearly like a really intentional and intelligent awareness of where the bottlenecks are. And those investments are turning out to be brilliant, by the way. But like chip design, Saudi, what's the connection there? Well, the connection there is that's the bottleneck to self-improving AI.
When I was meeting with Minister Abdullah Swaha, he said something which really stuck with me. He says, every week I have a meeting with MBS to talk about AI. It is his number one item on his agenda, and it should be. I mean, it drives me nuts that it's not the number one item on every senator and congressman's agenda here, and how it impacts health and how it impacts education. It's so transformative.